Most founders don't have a strategy problem. They have an internal pressure problem. And until that pressure is addressed, no strategy in the world is going to work. Because this might sound a little confrontational, but it's actually relieving once you hear what I'm talking about. And here's what confuses people. The founders that I work with, they're smart, they're experienced, they're capable. These are really top level, high caliber individuals. They've read all the books, they've had the consultants, they've built the decks, they've made the pitches, they've been where most people want to be. And yet they're stuck. And it's not because they don't know what to do. It's simply because they cannot move. Have you ever felt that way? You know exactly what you're supposed to do. You've got a plan. You know the next step, but for whatever reason, you feel fill in the blank, paralyzed, frightened, nervous, locked, brain fog. Like all these different things come up that keep us from doing the thing we know we're supposed to do. The problem is strategy assumes that there are no hidden variables. Things have some sort of predictability, that you already have a calm nervous system. But the moment the pressure shows up, the moment some pressure starts to inflict itself upon you, pressure hijacks all of it. I want to explain that a little bit for you today, because this is something that I've dealt with, and I'll tell you part of my story here in just a moment. But I want you to know that if you're feeling this, this is not a place for you to feel shame that you're going through it. You are not stupid. You're not missing it. You're not, broken. You're not something wrong. You're not alone. If anything, it's when that pressure starts to come upon you, what happens is your focus, everything gets narrow and it collapses your field of vision. You can't even see the things you're supposed to see. You can't see the options. You can't see the possibilities because for whatever reason, all that your system sees is in this narrow little vein. And it turns out that every decision, every next step, suddenly on some intellectual, physiological, emotional level, feels like it's a referendum, a judgment, or a measurement of your own worth. Under pressure, leaders, they don't optimize. It's impossible to optimize. Instead, they protect. And you can fill in the blank with what you're protecting. Sometimes it's ego. Sometimes it's weakness. Sometimes it's vulnerability. Sometimes it's some low grade of unknown. When you are avoiding the hard conversation, when you delay the necessary cuts, when you overwork the levers that have always been familiar to you, that's when suddenly your strategy starts to break down. And it's not a failure of the strategy itself per se. It's that unregulated nervous system doing what it knows to do. And what it does best is survive. So you've heard this before where your brain has these parts to it where it goes to fight and flight. And that's what this pressure activates. That's what it provokes, is it gets you to a place of freezing, fighting, or flying, right? The fight, flight, or freeze. Because your unregulated nervous system is the stumble to your strategy. And this is something that I've had to confront personally. And some of you have heard my story where, my first business that I started, we did a big music festival and we had the plan. We knew we were going to get some people in there. We were going to have some great artists, and it didn't go well. We had thunderstorms come in. We lost $72,000 that weekend. And for our small little organization, that was a lot of money. And so I was working to put a plan together to get out from under that, but for the pressure. In this season, the strategy looked good on paper. I was going to do this, and I was going to do this, and I was going to do this. And I had this systematic way to pay down the debt, to take some of our profits and revenue to go over here into debt reduction while we had survivability in the company. Meanwhile, internally, that pressure was moving me in all the wrong ways. And I started making choices that weren't healthy, weren't hopeful, weren't serving the business, and weren't serving me. And under that pressure, I wasn't acknowledging the identity pressure, how it was challenging how people, how I thought of myself, or the financial pressure, like just the raw numbers, or the reputation, like what would people think? Like those things were all happening all at the same time. And I couldn't acknowledge it. I didn't see it in that moment. Everything was just, on one hand, it was a blur. On the other hand, it was numb. And if you've ever been in that place, you know what I'm talking about. When that severe pressure comes, you can't see clearly. You just choose to contain, to protect, to survive. And that containment, we give it all sorts of other fancy names. We say it's discipline. We say it's ambition. We say it's good work ethic, because all we know to do is more of what we've always done. And that becomes the trap for any kind of entrepreneur that they fall into. In these moments when something isn't working, we assume the answer is more strategy or work harder. Oh, let's go rework it. Let's go change the strategy. Let's change the strategy. And then we haven't even fulfilled the strategy, so we don't even know what's working, what's not working. So we're just junking it all up. Or we apply just working harder, either on the strategy we had or in combination with the changing of the old strategy. And I want to give you a new framework, a better plan, another hire, a smarter funnel. Well, is that going to work? That's the strategy that's changing again. And again, we're back into this place of not having the clarity, the objectivity to be able to see what our next step should be. And I will tell you this, you cannot out-strategy a compressed nervous system. Let me say that again, and I'll say it a little bit differently. You can't out-strategy an unregulated nervous system. When all that compression comes, fight or flight is the only thing that knows how to prevail. So pressure, and some people say, oh, I think better under pressure. I get more done under pressure. I'm like, that's not necessarily the same. And it's also another habit, which we'll talk about on another day, of a way that you've used to stimulate yourself. Adrenaline junkie, if you will. So if pressure doesn't need better thinking, what does it need? I would tell you, first of all, it needs space. The reason the pressure goes undiagnosed is simple. Most times, pressure looks like productivity. Like I said before, from the outside, it looks like drive, ambition, good work ethic. But internally, it's a constant state of urgency. And typically that urgency is based in scarcity. And any decision you make from scarcity is typically a bad choice. Nothing ever settles. Winds never land. Rest doesn't restore. You're just in this manic state. And that's not ambition. That's internal load. That's weight. That's heaviness. One of my one-on-one clients, we'll call him Jeff, because He doesn't necessarily want his story told out to everybody. And we'll say Jeff, he's the co-founder of a health tech company. And before we started working together, as we started working together, he was separated from his wife. He was living in a different city, constantly in this low-level anger. Like the smallest things would cause him to snap. Every error, every missed opportunity, every confrontation, he would just lose it. Just like what do you call it? Hair trigger type stuff, right? And so within the company that he co-founded, the sales weren't producing, revenue was hemorrhaging, and there were a whole other number of issues. And when he came to me, he's like, I can't figure this out. He knew something had to change, but he couldn't determine what it was. And so as we started working together, he gained perspective. I started to show him the tools. I started to reflect back to him like a mirror, like, hey, this is what this looks like. This is how it's perceived. Is that what you're trying to communicate? Furthermore, the way he saw himself was shifted too, his identity. And through those tools, through the reflection, through the identity, he discovered something that shifted his entire world. And he suddenly was able to take pause, create space, create some distance between him and the issues before him. And he discovered that he wasn't unhappy because of the business. He wasn't unhappy because of his spouse. He wasn't unhappy because he didn't know what to do. What he discovered was how to regulate his emotions under the pressure, how to regulate his perspective under the load. 9 months later, from when we started working, he moved back home with his wife. His company was able to raise a new round of funding, and his sales shot back up for increased revenue. He told me this. He said, I guess I've never been happier. Well, actually, he didn't say never. He said, I haven't been this happy in years. I think that was the direct quote. So if you think about that, if what we're all facing right here, right now, in this day and age where everything is changing, everything is fluctuating, there's so much uncertainty, so many unknowns, it's creating heightened sense of scarcity, heightened sense of the unknown, heightened sense of all sorts of stress and anxiety, and that is all pressure. That's why this message is so vital. This is why I'm doing what I'm doing. And don't get me wrong, strategy still matters, but it only works after the pressure is addressed. See, clarity isn't something that you can just will your way through. It's not something you can force. It's something that only returns once your system can breathe. And the highest leverage, the highest difference-making thing that a founder can make is not necessarily a new plan, but rather reducing that internal pressure. And for different personalities, that can look differently. Some people carry a pressure that's self-inflicted by their measurement of perception by others. Some people carry it by a perception of what they can think through in their own mind. Some from a place of control. Like, we all have these different pressures. It's a matter of finding out, what are the pressures that trigger me? And how do I get the tools? How do I manage myself to be able to manage the pressure? So if you feel stuck right now, if you're in a place where you feel like you're under pressure, stop asking, what strategy am I missing? Start asking, what pressure am I carrying that I haven't named? What pressure am I carrying that I'm choosing to ignore? What pressure might I be self-creating? These are more powerful questions to ask of yourself, because when that pressure is resolved, the strategy will reveal itself. that becomes the clarity. That's where the real leadership begins. So if what I've shared today is resonating with you, I'm going to put a couple links down below, and they will help you reset clarity under pressure. Furthermore, if there's something in this that I just shared with you, like something that you needed to hear, something you want to hear more of, let me know in the comments. I'm watching, I'm listening. Let me know what spoke to you. And if you want more conversations like this, I invite you to subscribe. The mission here is simple. I am working to get 10 million leaders to just spend 10 minutes a day to become the 10.0 version of yourself. Decide today if you're going to be one of them. I'll see you next time.